See all those hills behind me? That's all the trails right across the street from the house that I run in the summer. And they won't be open until May 1. So I've got a lot of training to do to get ready for the trails. Anyways, just out for a nice cruise around the hood. I have about a 4-mile loop I can do around the house. That's part bike path, part foot travel trail. But I just got off a great interview call with Well and Good. And the topic today was, has this fitness industry overemphasized core training? And we had a wonderful conversation about core, what the core is, how to train the core, and if there's a better way to maybe have a mindset around the core. So here goes. I know you're going to enjoy this one. Hey, how are you, Lauren?
Good, how's it going?
Real good, real good. Am I sounding good?
Yeah, sounding great.
Awesome, how are you?
I'm good. Yeah, excited to chat about the core.
Yeah, exactly, me too.
Yeah, so this is for Well and Good. And the premise of the story is that this idea that maybe we've gotten to a place in the fitness industry, the fitness community, where core is sort of like the answer to everything. You know, you want to improve overall athletic performance, more core strength. You want to run faster, more core strength. You want to, decrease back pain, more core strength. When the research doesn't necessarily back all that up. Obviously, core training makes your core stronger, which is good, but maybe it doesn't have all those other benefits. So it's sort of about why we became so obsessed with the core and sort of the limitations of core training.
And we're talking in general terms, not specific to running, but just general fitness, so to speak.
General fitness, but of course, you can speak from the running perspective. And,
cool. Good.
Yeah, so my editor, Jenny Heimlich, mentioned that she heard that you had a stance on this. So I'm curious to hear just, I guess, your initial sort of like reactions to this premise and where you stand on it.
Yeah, my initial kind of thoughts in my head were two things. Is one, that maybe we don't understand, and when I say we, I'm maybe talking the general public or the, your readership, listenership, whatever, is what is the core? And I think a lot of times that's lost in what we're talking about. Is many times maybe people's mind automatically goes just to our abs. Yeah. But there's a lot of school of thought in general traditional terms that our core is quite possibly more than 8 muscle groups. Mm-hmm. And I think that's maybe where everything you just talked about of the importance of the core and maybe why it became so important, because I think it is. Mm-hmm. So I think if we think of the traditional core of 8+ muscle groups, it is very, very important. Okay. Yeah. But for whatever reasons, again, our minds automatically go to our core, which is our abs. And that's just one of 8+. So, right. And then secondly, how do we train the core? And I think that's been lost of what are good and bad, so to speak, types of exercises that go to attack these 8+ muscle groups. So that's kind of the direction I was thinking when I initially, heard your topic.
Totally. Yeah, it's funny because it's like, if it's 8 muscle groups, like, of course it's important. That's like such a big part of your body. Yeah. So of course,
and with that, for example, some school of thought is part of our core is our diaphragm, that it goes that high. Mm. Okay. So, and again, just to give people who are, listening or what you're going to write about is that, some of those muscle groups are our upper and lower abs. Our lower abs are more important than our upper abs from an athletic standpoint. Our glutes, our lower back, our spinal muscles, our obliques, our diaphragm, so all of that kind of encapsulates what our core is.
Yeah. So with these ideas that you're speaking of, what do you think most folks are sort of like doing wrong in practice, in the actual practice of core work?
I think first and foremost, having the mindset our core is our abs, and therefore then they're isolating abdominal types of muscles or exercises. And so they're, again, crunches or, whatever the traditional type of ab type of workout. Again, it's not necessarily maybe right or wrong, but understanding, are you really accomplishing what you think you are? And I think that's the key mindset here, is that maybe all of this is not right or wrong, but are you really accomplishing maybe what you've been told or think you are?
And what about in running specifically? Like, how do you think about the role of the core with your athletes? And are there like running specific misconceptions about what the core can do?
Yeah, let's take a step back just to what I answered. I think you asked what people aren't doing. Mm-hmm. In any type of what I consider core exercise that I prescribed in my books or with my athletes, is that I always want to incorporate some type of rotational movement with any type of exercise, because that's going to do a few things. Rotational forces in our body are how we move functionally. And running. Every time we run, we're having to stabilize rotational forces. So if we're talking about a true, very specific type of core exercise, we need to introduce rotational types of movement with that. So for an example, one of the best core exercises from these 8+ muscle groups is the plank. And plank gets lots of great publicity because it is so good. But I would say maybe look to add a rotation movement with your plank. And now you're becoming even more functional from an athletic and running perspective. So a simple way, instead of just holding your plank, hold your plank, but then lift one knee to your opposite elbow and back. Now you're having rotation, and that becomes even more specific. And then that pulls in the diaphragm aspect of it. And what, again, people might not be doing is that they might be getting their core strong, but are they using it when they're doing their athletic abilities? Meaning, can they breathe through the use of their core? Mm-hmm. Okay, so again, you might be strong, but once you go to run or do something athletic, you're not able to engage that because you haven't practiced that. So that's where the rotational aspect comes in. Now you're through the rotation, the rotation naturally activates the core. And because you're adding that movement, you're having to breathe through it, and you're training your brain to be able to activate and breathe. And that's not always easy for people.
Do you have a sense of why, or when and why, the fitness sort of community's obsession / misunderstanding of the core, where it comes from? Is it just the idea, this idea that the core is the abs and a six-pack is a badge of honor? Yeah, totally.
I mean, I think that's one. And I think that's the longest maybe that's kind of been around forever, right? The aesthetic aspect of having that six-pack because it's visible, and now you start to add in the influencers in the social media, and what happens in all of that environment is that now people are looking to get content out. So they're just throwing, any type of exercise they can think of up on social media because it's more content. And I think that's a big problem, because now there's no rhyme or reason as to why maybe you're showing an exercise and there's no philosophy behind it. And if we stick with a philosophy, then we can kind of work within a good stable platform and philosophy, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. Can you speak a little bit more to like in running specifically, what is the role of the core in running? And then are there things that like, you know, maybe the core can't do?
Yep.
Maybe the core is said to be a solution to this problem, but actually it's something else, if that makes sense.
I love this. Okay, sorry. Let's go back to what the core is. Okay, from a running perspective, we heard or hear about how important stabilization in our glutes are. So if we understand our glutes are a part of our core, glute stabilization, core stabilization, our abdomen, our obliques, all our spinal muscles, all that is required for good stabilization as we run. You know, the muscles all up our spine help us stabilize, especially running downhill. Okay, our arms help us stabilize. So again, from a true core perspective, it's very important for all those reasons. We have to have good stabilization in our glutes to keep our hips stable and to keep our ability to run forward well. Mm-hmm. But diving in deeper, you know, I've coined the term our foot core. And getting back to maybe what people aren't understanding is that when we try to train glute stabilization, we need to be loaded. We need to be on our feet loading that exercise so it's forced to stabilize in a very, very functional manner. And how we use our feet, how we train our feet is the best way to activate the core or the glute stabilization in this specific term, okay? So training your feet to train your glutes is a big part of my philosophy, okay? And so we used a plank as an example before. We could use the clamshell as an example of training our glutes, okay? What isn't that doing? It's not loaded, so it's not functional, okay? And all it is strengthening the muscle versus turning it on. And most people that think they need to become strong in their glutes need to actually train to turn the muscle on. They have the strength. The light switch just isn't on. And to do that, the leg has to be loaded.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
For the average recreational, you know, athlete, whether they're a runner or maybe just a more general, you know, fit person, how would you suggest or what role should core training play in their sort of fitness regimen, like, you know, for a week of training? How much focus should there be on the core?
Well, that's I hate general because I'm always so work with me there. I think if we truly understand how to do it, it should actually be part of everything we do.
Right.
Okay. And so what I mean by that, there's those exercises that we've talked about and the kind of the exercise environment where you're in your living room doing these exercises or at the gym doing these exercises maybe 2 to 3 times a week. But then there's also things that we can do while we're out running. Jump training, running downhill, practicing good run form, doing sprints, doing hill repeats. All of that might be seen as run training, but it's also accomplishing what I call strength running or training in this perspective, the core. Okay, even just hopping on both feet forward very quickly is core training. Okay, so there's many things that we can do while we're out running that becomes core training, which, to answer your question, should be going on all the time.
I think you've answered most of my questions. Any other thoughts on the core, misconceptions about the core?
Yeah, again, for me, it just goes back to my big belief of talk about foot core. See our feet, especially as runners and any type of athlete, the majority of the athletes are spending time on their feet. And we really don't train our feet. And they're the most important stabilizer we have that affect everything else. So getting back to maybe the core point and topic of this talk is that our core, our foot core is just important as our core, and maybe more important because it affects how we use our core. So I would challenge people to start looking to train the feet. In training your feet, you're going to train your core and activate other muscles. Super important.
All right, great. Well, thank you so much for sharing your insight. Super interesting.
Anytime. I love doing it. All right. Thanks, Lauren. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Have a good one.